Most world leaders have bodyguards to take a bullet for them. King Zog I of Albania was different. He was the only head of state in modern history to draw his own service pistol and fire back at his would-be assassins. Over the course of his reign, he survived no fewer than 55 assassination attempts. They called him the man with 55 lives, a king who ruled a land of blood feuds and shifting shadows, with a cigarette in one hand and a loaded gun in the other. This is the story of Ahmet Zogoli, the tribal chieftain who turned a chaotic corner of the Balkans into a kingdom, only to lose it all to the tides of world war. To understand the man, you have to understand the land that forged him. Albania, at the end of the 19th century, was a fractured province of a dying Ottoman Empire. It was a place where the mountains were high, the law was old, and the blood feud, or jakmaria, was the ultimate arbiter of justice. Born in 1895 in the castle of Burgayet, Ahmed Mukhtar Bey Zogoli was the son of a powerful clan leader from the Mati region. From birth, he was steeped in a culture where survival was an art form and power was something you took, never something you were given. By the time he was a teenager, the Ottoman Empire was collapsing. The young Zogoli found himself thrust into the heart of the Balkan Wars and the First World War. He was educated in Constantinople, but his heart remained in the rugged mountains of his home. When Albania declared independence in 1912, it was a country in name only, lacking borders, a stable government, or a unified identity. Zogoli realized early on that if he wanted to lead, he couldn't just be a tribal lord. He had to become a modern statesman, or at least a very convincing imitation of one. In the power vacuum following World War I, Zogoli rose through the ranks with terrifying speed. By the age of 25, he was the Minister of the Interior. By 27, he was Prime Minister. He was charismatic, tall, and possessed a quiet intensity that unnerved his rivals. He understood the Albanian psyche better than anyone. He knew that in a land of 1,000 local kings, there could only be one ultimate authority if the nation was to survive. But his rise was not without blood. In 1924, he was forced into exile after a popular revolt led by a liberal bishop named Fan Noli. Most men would have stayed in the shadows, but Zogoli spent his time in Yugoslavia, brokering deals and gathering an army of mercenaries and tribal loyalists. Within 6 months, he marched back into Tirana and seized power. This time, he wasn't going to let it go. In 1925, he declared Albania a republic and made himself president. 3 years later, he decided that president sounded too temporary. He declared himself Zog I, King of the Albanians. His coronation was a spectacle of contradictions. He swore his oath on both the Bible and the Quran to appease a religiously diverse nation. He changed his surname from the Turkish-sounding Zogoli to Zog, which simply means bird in Albanian. He was a king who wore Western-tailored suits and smoked up to 150 scented cigarettes a day, yet he lived in a palace that was essentially a fortress, surrounded by guards he could only half trust. As king, Zog began an ambitious program of modernization. He banned the veil for women, outlawed the traditional blood feuds that were draining the country's manpower, and attempted to build roads and schools where only goat paths had existed for centuries. He was trying to drag a medieval society into the 20th century by sheer force of will. But modernization required money, and Albania had none. This led Zog into a dangerous dance with Benito Mussolini's Italy. The Italians provided the loans and the infrastructure, but the price was Albanian sovereignty. Zog spent much of the 1930s trying to play a high-stakes game of poker with Mussolini, accepting Italian gold while trying to prevent an Italian takeover. While he played the diplomat on the international stage, at home he was a man under siege. Because he had broken so many traditional codes and suppressed so many rival clans, he was the target of countless besa, or blood oaths. His enemies weren't just political, they were personal. The most famous attempt on his life occurred in 1931 during a visit to Vienna. Zog was leaving the Vienna State Opera after a performance of Pagliacci when 2 former Albanian army officers opened fire on his car. His loyal adjutant was killed instantly. Most kings would have ducked for cover. Instead, Zog pulled out his own pistol and stepped out of the vehicle, returning fire into the darkness. He chased the assassins down the street, trading shots until they were eventually apprehended by the Austrian police. He returned to Albania as a living legend, the king who refused to die.
The paranoia, however, was justified. He rarely appeared in public. When he did, he wore a silk-lined bulletproof vest. He became so concerned about being poisoned that his mother, the Queen Mother Sadije, supervised the royal kitchens herself, personally tasting every dish before it reached her son's table. He was a prisoner in his own palace, ruling a country that was increasingly becoming a puppet of Rome.
In 1938, Zog married the Hungarian Countess Geraldine Apony de Nog-Apony, a woman known as the White Rose of Hungary. For a brief moment, it seemed like the king might finally find stability. They had a son, Leka, in April 1939, but the celebration was short-lived. 2 days after the birth of the prince, Mussolini's patience finally ran out. Italian warships appeared off the coast of Durrës. The invasion of Albania was swift. Zog, realizing that his small army could not withstand the might of the Italian military, made a controversial decision. He gathered the royal family and as much of the national gold reserves as he could carry and fled across the border into Greece. To his critics, he was a coward who abandoned his people. To his supporters, he was a pragmatist who saved the symbol of Albanian sovereignty from being captured by fascists.
The rest of Zog's life was a nomadic existence in the gilded cages of Europe. He moved from Greece to Turkey, then to Romania, and eventually to England. During the height of the Blitz, the Albanian royal family lived in the Ritz Hotel in London, and later in a country estate in Buckinghamshire. Zog spent his years in exile trying to convince the Allied powers to recognize his government in exile, but he was a king without a kingdom. The world had moved on, and a new force was rising in the mountains of Albania, the communist partisans led by Enver Hoxha.
After the war, the communists took control of Albania and formally abolished the monarchy. Zog was barred from ever returning. He moved his family to Egypt, where he was welcomed by King Farouk. But after the Egyptian Revolution in 1952, he was forced to move again, finally settling in France. The man who had survived 55 assassination attempts and the collapse of empires finally met his end not by a bullet, but by illness. King Zog I died in a hospital in Sourness, France, in 1961, at the age of 65. He was buried in Paris, far from the Mati Mountains and the castle where he was born. It wasn't until 2012, on the 100th anniversary of Albanian independence, that his remains were returned to Tirana and laid to rest in the royal mausoleum.
King Zog was a man of immense flaws and incredible resilience. He was a dictator, a reformer, a visionary, and a survivor. He took a collection of warring tribes and tried to forge them into a nation, often using the very violence he sought to suppress. He was a relic of an old world trying to navigate a new one, a man who lived his life on the edge of a knife. His legacy remains a subject of intense debate in Albania today. Some see him as a modernizer who gave the country its first taste of European stability, while others see him as a self-serving autocrat who fled when his people needed him most. But regardless of how history judges his politics, one fact remains undeniable. He was a man who stood his ground when the bullets started flying. He was the king who shot back, a man who refused to be a victim of his own history. Subscribe.